Hello and welcome to our main topic today. We are talking all about Roll20, and we won't be talking about Roll20 in a vacuum because we have not one, but two very special guests here today from Roll20. We have Morgan, Buck, and Andrew Searles. So, with no further ado, could you introduce yourselves and let us know what you do for Roll20?
Andrew, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. I am the principal product manager at Roll20, specifically in charge of the VTT. So what that really means is not like, I control everything about it, but what a product manager really does is they help try to identify the biggest things that we should be working on. So I often tell people that, like, if there is that thing that you wanted us to build and we just haven't done it yet, you're probably angry at me. Because for some reason or another, I've prioritized something else over that. And I will say too, if you are angry at me about those things, I want to hear it. I want to hear what you have to say. So
maybe in a nice way.
Yeah, but maybe in a nice way. But
Cool.
Yeah, all feedback is feedback, so that's good.
Yeah, and that's what
I do.
I'm Morgan. I'm the CTO at Roll20, Chief Technical Officer. So that's mainly on the tech side of things, choosing development strategy, hiring software developers, things like that. And then as of 2022, January of 2022, I'm now also running the product discipline, which is Andrew's group. So that's all of the other product managers like Andrew that have, coverage of the other areas of our site, whether that's, the character sheets, the compendium systems, the marketplace, all of those sorts of things.
That's fantastic.
And I just wanted to ask real quick about your gaming history. Have you been involved in role-playing games, and what's your favorite game, and what do you enjoy playing, those sorts of things?
Yeah. I've been playing role-playing games for a long time. My mother introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons AD&D when I was a kid. And I remember playing that I remember sitting with all the books around me, just sort of like absorbing it as I went. I played many other games as I grew up, lots and lots of different games that weren't just D&D. Right now, I would say probably my favorite game is the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. I really, really enjoy the character progression in that game. The ability to sort of modify your character after every session is... I think it allows me to really be engaged with that game. So I love it.
I started in 1989 when I was 7 years old with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness was my first TTRPG. My awesome. Best friend's older brother was running a campaign and decided that he wanted to test out his adventures on me and my friend first. And that's how we got started. And that kind of ended up being sort of my in to nerd groups throughout the rest of my early childhood, early adolescence. In sixth grade, one of the guys in my advanced math class had the second edition Player's Handbook and couldn't figure it out. And he heard that I played TTRPGs. And so he brought it over to me. And so that's how I got to be in my first gaming group, is I taught them how to play from the book because they couldn't figure it out.
That's great.
But yeah, my professional experience is mostly outside of TTRPG until Roll20. Before that, I was mostly in video games.
First in my mind is that's so cool that you started with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and now it makes me think, like, I want to meet someone who started with the Ghostbusters RPG. Like, there's a list of sort of wild starts that could be out there, and I think Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of them. That's awesome. So Roll20, for anybody who's listening or watching this that doesn't know, is a virtual tabletop, and it's been around for a while. When exactly did it emerge in the industry? Do you guys know?
Yeah. So the actual kind of debut was with the Kickstarter in 2012. basically the story here is that the three founders, Riley, Nolan, and Richard, they played D&D in college. When they got out of college, they were missing their old game. Riley was a software developer. He built a really basic VTT because they couldn't find one they liked at the time, and started running their game in it. And after a couple of weeks and finding out that it wasn't too bad, they're like, well, I think more people would be used to this. They put up a Kickstarter with a $5,000 goal, and they ended up hitting, I think, around 40,000. And yeah, launched then with the original Kickstarter backers as users, and then from there, I think it was like 3 years later, something like 2015, they hit their first 1 million accounts. And so, basically started off as a very small thing. Oh, hey, some people might be interested in this, and then it became a business.
And now at some point it was, I guess, acquired or received funding from the OR group. And what is the OR group and how does that relationship work?
Okay. This is funny, actually. So the OR group actually is just Richard, Riley, and Nolan. And so at the time, they had no idea that Roll20 was going to go blow up and be a successful business. They really only wanted to file for one LLC. So they tried to file with like a name that they felt they could do a bunch of other stuff. They tried publishing a comic back in the time and a couple other things. The OR, I think it was an OR group. It was like Knights of OR or something like that, was their World of Warcraft guild. So no, really, that's just the original owners, and then they were doing DBAs for like their comics enterprise and for Roll20. Since we came together with One Bookshelf, we are now officially Roll20 LLC. So no real relationship there, just the guys that founded the company.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. I appreciate breaking that down because I always wondered whether this was like an outside entity or something like that. Because in my day job, that's how basically everybody I ever worked for works. So that's cool.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, but for us, we're we just got started from that Kickstarter, and there hasn't been private investment in any way. We're still just independently owned.
And Andrew, I know you're a very recent hire, having worked at D&D Beyond before. Morgan, how long have you been with Roll20?
I started in January of 2020, so just before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, it's good to join a virtual tabletop. Okay.
For sure, yeah.
So I've been really impressed with Roll20 in the last couple of years, especially. It feels like there've been a big increase in sort of strategic thinking, bringing in Ankit Lal as the CEO. And a lot of communication that happens on your blog around what you are doing, the functionality you're adding. Can you tell us a little bit about, at the high level, what the strategic changes feel like? What is it that Roll20 is trying to do differently than it was, 3 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah. Well, so I was kind of the tip of the spear of the owner, sort of realizing that at a certain point they had gotten to a size where they really needed to pull some people with some outside experience into leadership positions to try to start fleshing things out. And so, I came in and I started like getting the infrastructure to scale up. I shifted team structures to something that was more industry standard to like help us get more work through the pipe. And then, there were a couple of other folks that joined the executive group that had, some outside industry experience. Ankit first originally joined us as an advisor, and just kind of was giving such strong advice, and had became so instrumental in that role that eventually the owners decided they wanted to offer him the CEO position. I think everything that we're really doing here is sort of an extension strategically of what the owners wanted to achieve. I think that they were always really passionate about having tons of vocal communication with users. They were really passionate about constantly releasing features and trying to keep people kind of constantly experiencing innovation, and to really try to create as smooth and as streamlined an experience to let just people just play. I think the real thing that it comes down to is that, folks like Ankit and myself brought a little bit more like broader industry experience to like help that scale up, so that it could happen across more surface areas with a bigger code base, with bigger teams. But yeah, I mean, that still remains the focus. I think we really want to make sure that we're kind of laser focused with our teams, that we know exactly what each of them is working on, what the outcome we want them to have at the end of the year is, what things we're kind of tracking towards to get to that. And then really like, especially trying to figure out how to take that original vibe of like when the company was 4, 5, 6 people and everyone was on the forums of like, well, now how do we push that out to like a distributed team system? How do we make sure that every team is having a dialogue with users specific to them? And, I think, Andrew's doing a great job with that, being really, talking a lot and like starting to produce a dialogue about work we're doing on the VTT. I think our developers on our sheet development side are also really good at getting out there and talking to people about what they've done and taking feedback about what's not working and responding to that in their daily work. And we're really just trying to take those successes and replicate them across all of the teams so that like there's a constant conduit like directly with the people who are working on the things that people care about.
That's good work. That is good hard work.
Speaking of mergers, yeah, exactly. Speaking of mergers and strategic changes, Roll20 and some of the biggest news of the past couple of years in role-playing game in the role-playing industry merged with One Bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into the company's overall strategy, and what's the relationship like between those two companies?
Yeah. So let me see. So trying to rewind to when that was going down. So we had just had this enormous growth spike that, it was one of those like bittersweet things with the pandemic that sucks that everybody's stuck at home, but like it was really cool to be able to be part of giving people an outlet and a way to be social during that. And we did see a ton of growth. And we were kind of starting to set our sights to like what happens what happens later when people are looking to move back in person. And so one of the big things that we were thinking about is what are the different ways, what are the different user journeys that people can take to play tabletop role-playing games? And sort of starting to imagine that, there was people playing in person, there's people playing virtually, more people shifted to virtual, but that, we could really start to envision this kind of pathway of people starting to move between the two over time, that, people weren't probably going to go to games sick anymore, that you start to see tables that wanted to incorporate people who lived far away, but maybe wanting to be in person whenever they could get away with it. And so we were thinking, about all those pathways, and really saw like a PDF marketplace and the ability to purchase like lots of books, but bring them with you on in that portable way. That was something that we wanted to do as part of that package. And, I think in the same way, the folks on the OBS side were starting to think about how they're going to be involved in virtual play. And it really just made a lot of sense to like pair with kind of like the best in class marketplace for the area. It was something that kind of just felt was mutually beneficial on both sides. So the way that happened, we're taking our very sweet time with pulling things together, because everybody loves their work culture on both sides of the group. So the first group that we pulled together was the executive leadership, and we kind of figured out how all that group intermixed. And so now we've like one leadership group that's made out of the leadership groups of both of those organizations. And then, just kind of moving through one department at a time, we've been gradually integrating. So, right now, for example, on the teams that I have purview over, folks who are like specialized on working in the marketplace, still pretty much just work inside of the marketplace. We've had a couple of devs start to cross over and cross-train. And then the people who are working on the VTT side of the house, they're still mostly working the VTT side of the house. But we're starting to take the product managers and the lead devs from all those groups and starting to bring them together and have them report together and talk technology and next steps. And that's kind of step one of that integration process. And we've already kind of gone through those steps with the customer support, our user experience team, and marketing and content and publisher relations are already starting to work basically as a single team covering all those surface areas. So that's kind of what we're moving to over time, but we're also trying to do it in a way that's healthy and happy for all of the employees.
That's hard work to scale like that and to combine efforts of different employees together. So good luck with that. That's a great thing to work on. One thing I've always been impressed that ties into sort of the personnel side of things is the job postings over the last couple of years for Roll20 have been amazing. Really, some of the best that I've seen in the role playing game industry, and we've talked about that on the show a number of times. When we look at them, they tend to offer good pay, which is always nice, and state the salary, which is always really nice. Take some of the guesswork out of it. But it also has a really nice, the job postings always have this really nice breakdown of like, here's what you can expect to be doing in X months and in Y months, which speaks well to your approach towards personnel. On top of the fact that every time I meet somebody from Roll20, I have a really nice time talking to them. So kudos for that.
Those job descriptions are. Oh, thank you. Yeah, those job descriptions are the brainchild of our director of equity and inclusion, Jose Artiaga, and I mean that's exactly the goal. So I really feel great about it having the desired impact. We're really trying to be extremely transparent and create equity wherever we can, and it's a challenging thing to achieve. But that's just one little kind of sliver of how we're trying to get there.
Awesome. And the idea of the two companies working together, both companies have big fans, big user bases, but also a lot of people who would say, wow, it's been around, the solution's been around for a while, right? OBS has had drive-through for a very long time, and even the guild may feel young in some ways, but it's been around a fair amount of time too, and it's built off of the same kind of infrastructure. Roll20, a lot of people have been using it and seeing it in its current incarnation, and we'll talk about some of the changes that are coming. But a thing I hear often is a fan who'll say, I really like using these things, but when do you make the decision, or how do you approach the decision of, oh, should we just build a new thing based on everything we know and launch that, or should we refine what we have? And how do you, what can you share with the average fan out there who's wondering about that, of how Roll20 looks and OBS look at those kinds of questions?
Yeah. So I really want to let Andrew take one of these, but let me start with my dev strategy here. I come from video games and worked on a lot of live service video game products, and some that have been through like some pretty substantial overhauls, refactors, visual uplifts, things like that. I'm a big believer in rebuilding the plane while it's in flight, which is challenging. I think it's really easy for someone to look at a product and say, well, you know what, if we rebuilt that from scratch today, wow, it would be so much easier, especially as, a new CTO coming into a company that's been around for, I think, 8 years before I got here. It's definitely been tempting. And there are some places that we've gone and done it. But I think almost every single time you do that, you're going to underestimate how many features there are that exist that people rely on, that they care deeply about. And you get kind of stuck in a place where you've rebuilt it, but there's 20% of features that you don't have covered. Is it okay to release now? Are people going to be willing to adopt? Okay, well, now we got to 15% to 10%. And it's very difficult to satisfy both people who are ardent, longtime users, and as well as people who are trying to use the new thing. So my philosophy really is to try to choose technologies that slot in well as an additional step, and figure out how you can push those new technologies and that new style of architecture bit by bit through a platform in a way that's constantly releasing new value to users. So it's one of the reasons why on the back end, on the front end for our new front end UI, we chose Vue over React. Not that we necessarily prefer Vue to React, but Vue's very good at plugging in tiny little bits and components and gradually taking over a page. And so that's kind of our approach to everything, is how can we inject a piece of quality, kind of inoculate the system to how this new piece of technology is going to fit in, and then release new features to users as that technology gradually overtakes the old technology, and you're left with something better in the end. That's also not a perfect process, and can sometimes take a lot longer than just doing the rebuild, but it keeps the product from just going dark and not releasing anything for a while, and can still get you that goal as long as you're disciplined about it.
Yeah, from a product perspective, I would say too, it's a very similar sort of thought pattern. Often I'll ask myself, like, it is the desire of every tech team to make small iterative improvements as you go. But inevitably what will happen is, as you make choices about the next step that you want to take, you will start to find yourself shifting one direction or another when you really want to go this direction. We want to go this direction, but we're starting to go here. And so when you ask, like, how do you know when is it time to sort of look at a larger change, is when you start to say, like, either we're not going where we want to go, or where we want to go is now different. We need to sort of try to align those things. That's where you start taking steps back towards that line. And I think that's kind of where we find Roll20 at today, is we have made a lot of iterative changes over the years and have grown our user base and our feature base as a part of that. As you inevitably do, start to realize that there are lots and lots of things that Roll20 can do, but we want to make sure that we are taking small steps and even bigger steps towards the original goal of, this is easy to use. Ultimately, ease of use in our games mean it is easy for us to play the game that we love. And I'll often say, sometimes when using digital tools in role-playing games, it feels like you play the digital tool, and the digital tool plays the game for you. It's our desire to make sure that you are just playing the game, and the digital tool just fades into the background, and it helps you accomplish that goal.
That's great.
Right? So that's our focus. We want to make sure that people are playing good, fun, engaging games. And the tool you use to make that happen fades into the background as much as possible.
But if there's a piece of our tech that you're frustrated with, chances are we're in the midst of swapping it out. The evidence is probably there if you know where to look. But it's all kind of a work in progress.
What do you see as Roll20's strengths and weaknesses right now?
So the biggest strength that I think Roll20 has, and it was one of the reasons that I decided to join Roll20, is that I believe Roll20 is one of the best positioned tools today to be able to affect the role-playing game market and industry as a whole. I believe that the role-playing game industry will be dominated by the next 10 years through through technology, and how technology modifies and changes the way we play the game. And I think Roll20 is best positioned to be able to influence that as we move forward through all role-playing games. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest strengths for Roll20 is our ability to improve every game out there, no matter what the rule set is. And that's, that mission is directly aligned with what I want to do for the rest of my career, is improve role-playing games as we go.
That's great. And I've got a note later on in the show notes, but I'll bring it up now, which is that I really love what used to be the OR report that was published. And I'd love to see it published again, where Roll20 would put out here's what people are playing, and a number of games and a number of players. And it's really fascinating because it shows, of course, the dominance of D&D, which is no shock to anybody who understands the role-playing game industry, but also the huge breadth that Roll20 covers in all of these different games. And I love seeing the ups and downs where, a game from Brazil will emerge on the market in Roll20 and create a big explosion of players that are coming in from different countries and that are trying it in the US. And then, that might slow down, and then Call of Cthulhu rises back up and so on. But you see all these different games represented in the platform, which is really important for the hobby. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope that digital tools will continue to take lesser known games and give them a platform where they can really shine. I think that we have seen many things lead to success in a game, and one of the big ones, not just sort of brand recognition, I'll throw that in one category, but one of the other big ones is a well-supported tool set has really been correlated to game success. And I hope that as we can better support more games more easily and allow people to play and make more games through a digital tool set, we'll see a lot more games reach higher levels of popularity.
And how does that tie into the weaknesses you would say? I mean, I know this sounds like an interview question, like what is your weakness? But what is it that you look at Roll20, working there every day, and you go, gee, these are the things we want to work on. Like, what's in that category?
Yeah, I think that it's sort of an unavoidable. Strengths and weaknesses often come hand in hand. You're really good at something, and as a result, you're also not good at another thing that's related to it implicitly. I think that if you start to take a look at some of the biggest digital tools out there, what you start to realize is that bespoke support for one game can have a huge impact on its popularity. But there are thousands of games out there. In fact, Roll20 has over 1,200 different character sheets. That is a lot of games. And the amount of money that it takes to become a bespoke system for every single game it takes a lot. It takes a lot. Yeah. So our weakness is it is difficult for us to be bespoke for every single game out there. And that means that we become more and more generic for a lot of the long tail games, the games that have lesser of an audience, which honestly is something that I personally want to try to fix as we get better and better. I think that there are ways that we can create better support for those long tail games, allow greater customization as we go. But the reality of it is the more time you spend on one specific system, the easier it is going to be to play that one system. Mm-hmm. And Roll20 is focused on all of them, which means it becomes difficult sometimes. And sometimes you're like, well, why can't you just support this one specific rule from this rule set? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we can't right now. And so that becomes the weakness is our desire to be able to support all role-playing games often means that we have to be a lot more generic than some games deserve.
Sure.
Also, we started as a system that was tokens on a grid and not much more. And at this point in time, there are a lot of features. Some of them are quite advanced and hard to learn how to use. And all of those has been built up organically over time. I think that leads to another weakness is that right now our user interface exposes so much optionality, so many different ways that you can interact with it, so many different ways that you can set things up. It's pretty daunting for new users to come in and figure out what the most important components are. And so that's a big thing that we're thinking about a lot more. I think we're going to talk about it a bunch more in this interview too, is, really how do you have a user interface that both supports advanced features, a ton of customization, being able to go deep on a game system, but also is easy to absorb for first-time users and can let you kind of step into the experience at the level that you want to engage with it.
And that's something I hear a lot from
because we all know.
Go ahead, Shawn.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, from our data, it shows that Roll20 is one of the easier VTTs or virtual tabletops that are out there. There are probably easier ones. In fact, I can think of a couple that make it a little easier. And there are definitely ones that can make it more complicated with more options. But in our desire, we want to make sure we can get to that level of ease of use along with customized support for everything. And that's really what is my personal desire for a lot of the things that we are doing, but also Roll20's desire is to get to better support and ease of use at the same time.
Yeah, both engineering wise and creator wise, weaknesses are also opportunities. And I have a feeling that you are going to take advantage of those opportunities very soon. So can you talk about some of the changes that you have coming to the system in order to take advantage of those opportunities?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit, we've hinted at for a while that Roll20 is looking at how we can make big changes in this direction. And one of the things that we're getting ready to announce or are announcing is a new toolbar redesign, where we take that left side toolbar and we redesign it to be a lot more in line with what we feel like people should be experiencing through the UI, the VTT. one of the biggest pieces of information that we looked at was in a recent research blog post that my colleague and friend Brittany wrote, that really looked at comparing our old UI to our new UI with specific tasks that relate to like being able to create a map or understand which layer you're on even. And we've seen significant success in the new UI, making it easier for you to know, hey, what layer am I on? And how do I accomplish this create a map task? And that gives us a lot of hope. We're going to take small steps, right? So although we are taking corrective steps to go back towards a more ease of use redesign of the entire VTT, we're going to be taking small steps in releasing it and getting feedback from people. So that's our biggest thing that we're doing, is essentially we want to allow people to opt into this new thing, tell us what they think, and see if it is something that actually improves their games. And if it is, we start pushing it out to more people, and we start making better changes, and we start moving on to other tools that we're going to redesign. It is our hope that eventually you will see an entirely new VTT from Roll20. And when you look at them side by side, many months from now, I can't tell you when that's going to be done, but many moons from now, you will see, oh, wow, Roll20 really has changed a lot in how it looks. And it is a lot easier to use.
What's the best way for folks who are hearing this to follow along? Is it the blogs that you've been putting out periodically? Is it somewhere else?
Yeah, actually, we've just released a landing page that will be a sort of centralized location for all of this information. It's going to introduce the idea that Roll20 is going to be releasing a new designed VTT. It's going to introduce the idea that we are doing it with our users in mind. And in fact, in a lot of ways, we need our users to be able to adopt it for us to actually move on to our next phase. And it will show what have we changed and what are we looking at changing in the immediate future. So sort of a future roadmap. We can give you the link to that in the show notes, and awesome. People can kind of follow along there. It'll be a one-stop shop for while we are redesigning the VTT, where you can kind of learn everything, see the new UI, even interact with it, give us feedback about what you think about it, or maybe catch the next sort of live demo if there's one or something like that.
Yeah,
awesome.
And while it certainly won't be as involved or in depth as what Andrew's going to do with the landing page, we're also always putting out blasts of this on our social media. So following Roll20 on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok will give you all of you'll get links and little videos and things like that whenever we've got something new to look at. So that's like a lighter touch way if you want to stay on top of what's new. And then to what we said earlier on, really trying to get all of our teams out and engaging folks more, either on social media or on our own forums. And so especially, Andrew's team, that the forums are going to be a great place to come in and engage as well. If you've got feedback, comments, want to engage in the dialogue.
So we mentioned to the folks on our Patreon that we were meeting with you, and there was a lot of excitement because there are a lot of users there. And one of the things that came up often was, how do we get feedback to Roll20? And we've given you in our show notes a number of questions that we're passing on to you from them because you had asked for that kind of feedback. So we're not gonna cover it on this recording, but you'll get to see that and answer back if you're so willing. But a question that came up often was, where should I be as a Roll20 user to provide my feedback? Is it best for me to be on the forums? Do I, where do you like to see that feedback come in? What's easier for you?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. Well, first I would say, if you are a patron of Teos and Shawn on Mastering Dungeons, apparently you can give them questions and they'll give it to us. So that's one way to do it.
The best way.
No, but you can route that whole process if you want to. No, ultimately, we do have centralized places. On the forums is a really great place. Mm-hmm. We also follow like Reddit pretty heavily and Facebook groups and things like that. But providing feedback on the forums is a great way to sort of be able to get directly to us. So if you're looking for that, that's fine. But ultimately, what we're really focused on is making sure that we are collecting feedback in all the places where it's left. Because oftentimes people are not, they leave feedback in a lot of different places that are easy for them, that are convenient for them to be able to get into, right? I don't want someone to have to create a Reddit account just to give us feedback. And so our team is really looking at all of these different places. So if you're looking for a centralized place that we'll see every time, the forums is a good place. Putting in a help request ticket is also a good way to do that. But ultimately, we're most likely already listening out there and trying to find you. If you want to contact us directly, you can actually look through our forums and find, I've put out a couple of links around specific areas. You can find my calendar there, and you can even contact me and put in a session on my calendar, and we'll talk for 30 minutes about whatever it is that you have ideas about. I want to hear what you have to say, even if it sometimes is painful for me.
That's great.
So switching for a second from the user end to the creator side, we have, as you said, many hundred character sheets types there. If you're a creator and you want to get your goods onto Roll20, how do you do that? What are the steps? Who do you talk to?
Yeah. So first off, we've got a lot of help desk documentation. I can send links along for that for getting started as a creator. And that's for smaller creators that are looking to just get started on the marketplace, selling content. We also have a creators, I'm going to blank on it now. Come on, everybody uses this. Discord. There we go. We have a creators Discord where we've got members of our creator support team that are constantly engaging and answering questions, and other creators can help and answer questions. And then email sent in. I think we can send you all of these links. We generally gather information about new publishers that want to get involved through email. We've got a publisher relations team that focuses on setting every publisher that comes to us up with a particular point of contact that they can reliably use, and getting them into the system and figuring out how we're going to work together.
I know on the D&D side, the DM's Guild integration and drive-through integration has been a big part, where now when you sell a product and that PDF exists, you can purchase a version that's enabled on Roll20, and in Roll20 you can now see the PDF inside of the virtual tabletop, which is very cool. But also, there's the encouragement of, with drive-through, being able to sell a VTT version of your product. It creates the desire for a lot of creators to be able to say, okay, I've published an adventure, I've got it, say, on the DM's Guild, and I want to have that in the virtual tabletop. So I should make a virtual tabletop version of it. Option 1 is the PDF, but option 2 is to go into that greater, I want to have it as a playable experience and as a module that can be purchased. But I think, as I've spoken to creators and they've spoken to me before, when I told them that we were gonna have you on, they said it can be really hard to do that implementation, to set up that adventure in Roll20. A lot of hours of work. It may not be the strong suit of a creator to set that up, or a supplement creator if they're trying to do that. And hiring someone is expensive. And is that something that you are looking at changing in any foreseeable future?
Yeah, I can say right now that we do not have anything on the immediate future to affect any big change there. But I can say that I talk to a lot of creators and a lot of the problems that they have, and I hear that pain. I really do. I've experienced it myself even. So we talked a little bit about trying to better support games as all the way into that long tail, right? Taking a lot of those those sort of indie kind of games and giving them a platform that they deserve. Part of that is making tools that they can bring their content to people in a well-supported and easy to use fashion. We're not going to be able to accomplish this just by changing up a toolbar and making things a little bit easier to navigate around a map. Ease of use across our entire platform is going to have to include revamping and allowing creators to more easily put in content to make it easier for their customers to be able to use that stuff too. So that is a part of the entirety. But at this moment, we're really focused on the VTT UI rework and the things that we do there. So I can't give you any like hard fast answer when that will happen. But
it's good.
It is a focus. It is something that we really want.
Well, and this problem too isn't just content creators or people who are looking to sell something on the marketplace. This exact same problem set is facing independent GMs who want to run their own content, who want to have their own homebrew campaign setting or run their own adventures and modules that they've created themselves. I think it's the same kind of challenge is hitting people with different use cases. And like Andrew said, although we're really focused on the UI rework right now and some specific things on the map and the VTT itself, this is probably the topic that Andrew and I talk about the most. We've got a lot of ideas brewing and hoping to pick that up pretty soon. Yeah,
it is a big passion for me for sure. I will add also too that a lot of people are interested that have never done it before, never created their own content for Roll20, often are surprised to find that the very tools that you use to plan your games and create those are the tools that you use to make the thing. So we have a team of people that make, when a new book is published, they will take that book and they'll put it into a game and make maps in a very similar way that you make maps today. The same dynamic lighting tools, those kind of things. So by improving those tools, we improve the overall experience for why you play your game, the homebrew stuff that you make, but we also improve the creation tools that allow people to put in more content into the future. And so it's sort of a twofer.
Yeah, for sure. And do I understand correctly that during the pandemic, there was a time when there were more players from Italy than anywhere else? Is that true?
Not quite, but we did. So I'd only been here for a couple months. We were really just starting to do the major infrastructure upgrades that we were planning because we were already kind of projecting a year that was going to be bigger than the year before and wanted to get infrastructure ready to handle and scale, which thank goodness we did in time. But the way it happened was we had a bunch of alerts go off at night. It came in, we thought we were being DDoSed. And it took us, probably 20, 30 minutes of investigation before we found out that almost all of the IPs that were coming in were from Italy. And it took then, another little bit of a bit for us to put two and two together and realize that Italy had just gone into lockdown and it was like a Friday night, like peak playtime there. And so definitely during that period of time, it was a normally off-peak time for us, but it was a peak time in Italy. It was definitely way larger than we were expecting traffic-wise. And I'd say traffic from Italy was big for maybe another week or so, but for us, that was kind of like the moment in the natural disaster movie where everyone looks and there's the wave and it's coming. We're like, oh, because this is going to be everybody in a couple of weeks. And that we really just started scrambling to try to get the infrastructure in shape, ready to handle the rest of the wave.
That's amazing. So do you work on trying to serve international markets and how do you work to do that if you are?
Yeah. So historically, we've used crowdsourced translations in the early days that fit our need well enough, but that's definitely not the case anymore. During any given period of time, 30% of our traffic is from outside of the United States, and that number is always growing. We see, during the night when North American players aren't playing, we still have hundreds of thousands of people that are online accessing the platform. So this is something that we're really heavily focusing on in the next couple of years. We've already moved over to professional translations. We have 7 languages so far translated, but we're looking to cover a pretty substantial swath of Europe, Asia, South America with the languages that we cover and provide first tier support. We've got some of our first publishing arrangements. We've actually got a lot of publishing agreements with international publishers from outside of North America, and we're looking to increase that over time. So there's a really big focus here, and I can't get into all of the details of the things that we're going to be rolling out, but yeah, we're really looking to give our best experience to a much wider group of people.
That's great to hear. And we've covered a lot of good topics, and one thing that came up a lot when I was speaking to folks on our Patreon was their question around the VTT landscape, which of course has had recent news with D&D discussing their questions for virtual tabletop, or they're looking into the virtual tabletop space. One of the questions that came up over and over again is, are you going to make your fireballs really sizzle so that because that's the key to all successful virtual tabletops is a really good fire effect, I hear. Is that true? All right, let me try that question a different way, which is another question that came up often was, with D&D acting in this space, how do you work with Wizards as both partner, because you are partners, right? You have an agreement to carry D&D products officially, and that's a huge boon to Roll20 and on drive through with the DMs Guild. How do you work with D&D both as a partner and someone who wants to enter in that virtual tabletop space?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think we mostly keep it pretty compartmentalized. I think we're seeing the advanced looks at their virtual tabletop like everyone else is. We think that there's certainly, for some users and use cases, it's going to be a great solution. We think that what we're doing is still going to be a great solution for a lot of people. And I think just more broadly, even outside of Wizards, I think we broadly look at competition as a positive thing. I think it makes the entire industry better. It gives more people more options to address the right use case. The number of people who are playing tabletop role-playing games is increasing. The number of people who are willing to play virtually is increasing. I think there's a lot of space for a lot of different options and solutions to be at play here. And it makes all of us better. It makes the experience for players better. It makes things better for publishers. So, I think that's not something that I have. I mean, obviously it's on our radar. It's something we're thinking about. It's something that we think about when we figure out what features we're going to be targeting and things like that. But we're not having an existential concern. And so really we're focused on our partnership with Wizards through the things that we're partners on, which is, focusing on what's the content, what are we releasing, what's coming out when, what feature sets are people who are playing those games do we believe they're most interested in, the people who are choosing our platform, what's the best way to continue to serve their engagement with the games that Wizards releases. So, I think nothing too spicy there.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Can I ask, is your agreement, and then Andrew, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but is your agreement with Wizards the same as it is with any other publisher, or is it sort of special and different?
I wouldn't, not in a substantial way. We do individual negotiations with every publisher that we go into agreements with, and some of them have parent companies and things like that, and have certain things that are necessary for them to be able to be satisfied with it. But largely we're having very similarly formed agreements with everyone that we're working with.
The big question that folks ask is, do these agreements, whether it's with Wizards or someone else, how are they typically structured? Is it through an edition? Is it a time frame? Like, does a fan need to worry about, 5 years from now, the agreement with any RPG ends and then there isn't additional support? Or is it, are these things usually reapproved on a time basis, or are they focused on an edition? How does it work?
I actually might not have all of the information. I don't know these contracts super intimately myself, so I might not be the right person to give you a really detailed answer. I mean, all of these contracts have, things in it where folks could choose to not continue to engage in the agreement. But that's not something that we're worried about, that we foresee happening. There's no like ticking time bomb in any of our agreements where people have to worry about things suddenly getting pulled. I mean, I think business entities always have the freedom to be able to make changes to the agreements that they have ongoing at various cadences, but there's no like, when X happens, we're in danger and it may not get renewed, that sort of thing. Those aren't the types of negotiations that we're having.
For D&D specifically, and this is my last hard question, 2024 5e, does that require a new agreement, or is it just automatically, whatever gets published will be available on Roll20?
We're already making our steps to support 5e revised. There's no time bomb there. Gotcha. Everything that we have in mind right now is around that continuing on.
Fantastic. Those are all the major questions I had, though I could probably speak to you for another hour.
Yeah, we are about at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure we could. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention while you have the microphone? Anything that we should have asked that didn't? Anything that you wanted to give us as a parting shot?
Well, I guess I would say I am interested to hear in a future Mastering Dungeons episode what you all think of the new toolbar as it is released. And I will be watching specifically to what things I can do to make it better. I would add on to that, if others have feedback, we want that feedback. We'll give links in the show notes to the main landing page for the VTT redesign, where you can, it'll direct you right into my inbox so I can read it and hear that feedback. So
that's awesome.
I think that's the biggest thing that I personally want is as I want to be able to hear what everybody has to say.
Yeah, it was really cool seeing the redesign. I really enjoyed how the layers are being done, and so I think folks when they see that will really appreciate it. That's a big win in terms of ease of use. But I'll also say, for anybody out there who is dabbling in Roll20, or even if you're climbing up the mastery ranks, a really great thing to do is to find the virtual games being offered by Baldman Games through the Yawning Portal website. The people on there who run games month after month in Roll20 are so good at it. And I love just being a part of a game on Yawning Portal, so I can see how well they use Roll20 when they reach that level of expertise and they've got all the macros running and all this. It's really great to see. And that's something that I think Roll20 does really well. Is just when you want to get to that level of expertise, right? You have a lot of capacity to expand there. That's really cool to see.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I'd really think to add here, then this is part of the reason why we're seeking out being on podcasts like this, and I think you see it underlining a lot of the answers we had to your questions. We're really striving very hard right now to I think in the last couple of years, to your point, we focused really hard on having blog posts and things like that to get our messaging out there. But I think one of the major things we're trying to accomplish this year is to turn that from a monologue into a dialogue and find a better way to be consistently engaging with our users of all different types, whether, homebrew, people just getting started, people who've been on the platform forever, pro GMs, publishers, content creators. I think all of these people, we're really looking to be able to engage more personally, let them know who we are, who the people are that are working on the teams that they're on. We've got the forums for that right now, but I would really love to hear more from, your listeners and from anybody else about how best we could be out there directly engaging and getting feedback from them in a healthy way and really keeping everybody up to speed on what we're doing. We've got a lot of crazy stuff we're working on this year that I'm pretty excited about. And, I'm thinking about how we're going to talk to people about it when those things are getting ready for release, and would love suggestions about where people would want to see us engaging.
Right, thank you.
And to end this, where can people find either you or Roll20 specifically on social media or other places to follow the news?
So on let's see, on Twitter we are Roll20 app and Drive-Through RPG. I'm Geek Stress. It looks like Geek Stress, but that's not what I was originally going for. And I think similar handles for all of those things on Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah, for me personally, AC Searles. So you can find me on Twitter as AC Searles. We'll put it. I'll give it to you all to put it in the show.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
All right. Any last words, Teos? Nope. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Morgan, for taking some time with us today. And we look forward to gaming with all of our friends on Roll20.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Well, what a great interview. I thought we got some good information.
Absolutely. They did not, put up a virtual tabletop image when I asked the hard questions. So I was really happy.
Yeah, I mean, they answered everything that they could, which I thought was good. And a funny story, I played this past weekend with the gaming group that I originally played with when I was like 10 years old. And we played via Roll20 because people are all over the planet. And the people who hadn't played since first edition days were absolutely stunned by Roll20. They were like, wow, and our DM had some macros set up so it did automatic things, and they were just blown away. This was like the greatest thing they'd ever seen, and we're going to continue to do it every few weeks.
Awesome.
But that's the importance of something like Roll20, not only bringing the game to people, but bringing people together to be able to play. Whether they're new or whether they've been playing forever, whether they're old friends or new, it's just such an important part of this entire hobby.
100%. Yeah, and so it's great. It's great to see the work that they're doing. I'm really glad because for a while it was there wasn't a lot of kind of energy and a lot of news about what they were working on. It was just sort of the platform, and the platform is the platform. And for the last several years, it's been really a focus on change and hiring and reinvigorating, and that's awesome. It's great to see.
Mm-hmm. So we did ask a few questions of them from people from our Patreon, and so we want to thank you for listening, and we want to give a special thanks to all of our patrons. Thank you to our Master of Dungeons supporters. We give a special shout out to our Master of Realms supporters in our show notes, and to those Masters of the Multiverse patrons. Well, we're going to talk about you right now. We're going to talk about you, Graham Ward, James Walton, Matthias Valero at Twin Portals, Joe Tyler, Krishna Simone, I don't know how to say, Ross Sandberg, Chance Russo at Drago Russo, Falcon Neal, Sean Molly, The Micro Ant, Eric Mengi, Post Fiction RPG Audio, Chad Lench, Travis Lee, Brian King, Sean Hurst, Ben Heisler and Paige Lightman, Andy Edmonds at Nerdronomicon, Darren Chandler, Steve Bissonette, Craig Bailey, and the lessening and lessening Evil John Carney. Great to hear from you this week, Evil John. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our patrons. And if you like the show, please do consider becoming a patron of our show at patreon.com/masteringdnd. If you can't support us financially, we understand. It would help if you would leave a review of the show on either Apple Podcast or via whatever means you use to listen to the podcast, because the more reviews we get and the better those reviews are, the wider our reach. So thanks again for your support. Teos, where can people find your work on social media?
Find me at alphastream.org. What about you, Shawn? Where are you hiding?
I'm on Twitter at Shawn Merwin. I'm on Mastodon at tabletop.social. We're on YouTube. You did know that, right? We're on YouTube at Mastering Dungeons. We're all over the place. Yep. You can leave us reviews on YouTube as well. Subscribe and we've hit a benchmark, didn't we? Didn't we hit 100,000 views?
100,000 podcast downloads since October.
Oh, okay.
So that doesn't count previous to October, and it doesn't count the YouTube stuff. So that seems like a lot. I think it was all my mom though, so I'm not sure.
Well, Yeah, it was probably both our moms. So
Oh,
50,000 each sounds about right. Thanks, moms.
Thanks, moms. Yeah.
So Teos, we just hit some news and we just talked about Roll20 with people who are in the know. So what are we going to do now?
Well, I'm actually going to wait till the next time that my kids tell me I need to do something for the family, and I'm going to explain that I'm actually not part of the system. I'm just content.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell my family, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it on Roll20.
Nice.